Kris here, Green Sabre. Nice to see you again. Doom Telly, episode 30. Episode 30, the big 3-0. There should be some sort of seismic celebration for reaching 30 episodes of this fucking gibberish. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Okay, it's been a few weeks, as you'll have noticed again. Whenever I get this sort of cluster of bank holidays, my kind of regular planning goes to shit. So, because I live in a tiny house that's made out of crisps, it's basically, I've got like one window of opportunity to record these videos without external forces knackering that. So when it's a bank holiday weekend, it all goes to crap. And we've had sort of two fairly recently on the bounce, haven't we? So anyway, enough of that. So yeah, it's been quite difficult for me to find a window to do these recordings, but I found one now. So no thread, no continuation, nothing that I'm copying here either. It's one that I've got loads of these ranking type videos stacked up that I want to do. So I figured, fuck it, let's get one out of the way. And it was through a recent, I can't remember exactly what we were discussing. I think it was the Green Sabre stuff anyway, but I was talking to Simon out of Thy Listless Heart, and he mentioned he could hear a bit of a Faith No More influence in amongst it. And it must have been a sort of subconscious one, because it's nothing I consciously ever feel like would work with the Doom stuff, obviously. But anyway, Faith No More are a fucking gigantic band to me. They're one of my favourite bands of all time. Ever. I mean, yeah, they'd be in my top 3, maybe even. Anyway, that may shock some of you. Don't be shocked, don't be frightened. So yeah, I've decided, thanks to Simon sticking the earworm in me ear and then making me where else would an earworm go? Anyway, but basically putting Faith No More back in my head, and I've been listening to quite a bit of it over the last couple of weeks, so I figured a Faith No More ranking. So I'll call it something fucking stupid like I Care A Lot, because I care a lot about Faith No More. So this is my ranking. Besides that, no real Green Sabre updates at the minute. We've got the gig at Darklands Brewery for Lizard Fest 28 coming up all too soon in actual fact. June the 3rd, Saturday, June the 3rd. I think we're on at about 3 o'clock. But yeah, that's rolling around ever nearer, so can't wait for that. So if you're in the Darklands Brewery, Halifax area, get yourself to that. 3 o'clock, £5 entry as well. You get 6 bands. Can't remember the name of the others that are on, so sorry. Although I might stick a poster up at some point. In fact, yeah, let me insert the Darklands, the Lizard Fest poster. Insert image. So yeah, nothing further to report. T-shirt sales and CD sales had a bit of a burst when they went back on, so thanks ever so much all of you that have purchased stuff. Metal Marty Mac especially, you've got a full set there. CD, sticker, T-shirt. Oh yeah, the full self. Thank you, mate, for helping fund the next recording. We're not a million miles off budget either as well. A few more T-shirts, a few more CD sales, a few more gigs ideally. Payers, that is. And yeah, I think we'll be near enough budget to go into the studio, so watch this space. Anyway, enough of the Green Sabre updates. Let's get on with my Faith No More ranking. So, Faith No More. I discovered them in 1990, it will be. And it was one of them, do you remember the late night thing that were on after the fucking James Whale radio show and the Hitman and Her or whatever it was? It was the Power Hour or Raw Power or whatever the fuck it was called. Yeah, and it was the video for, I feel like, Off the Real Thing, Epic was the first single. Am I right there? I might be. Anyway, but it wasn't that one. It was when they released From Out of Nowhere. That might have been the first single, to be fair. But it was From Out of Nowhere. Yeah, that just gripped me. There was just something about it. It wasn't, at that point in my life, I was deep in a fucking Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, still a bit of Maiden creeping in there every now and then. But I was deep in the thrash zone, and I was getting into death metal as well. There was the likes of Morbid Angel. Who was the other one that was big to me at the time? Morbid Angel, was it fucking Obituary or someone? Or Pestilence. So anyway, there was some other... Death metal was just beginning to come onto my horizon at that point, early 1990, or whenever this was released. But yeah, it lit a beacon. And I remember there was something, I think it was Jim Martin's relentless guitar attack that he had with that, and that is one of the things that made Faith No More unique to me, because Jim Martin sounded like a thrash guitarist. He looked like a fucking thrash guitarist. The rest of them didn't. They were a really odd looking band, and probably still are to it. And yeah, there was just something about it. Mike Patton's sort of catchy vocal line. Personally, I'll go into it later, but I think his vocals got better as he went along. It was very nasal, very whiny sound on that early stuff when he first joined Faith No More, and on the first Bungle album. It's that same kind of nasal, whiny, great voice, but yeah, I think he got better once his vocal chops, what's the word I'm looking for, grew as such, like, and evolved. But yeah, there was enough. I went out and bought the Real Thing album and just listened to it to death for months. Yeah, it was just fantastic. And I've been a fan of Faith No More ever since. I love everything that they do. And I mean everything. We'll go into that as the ranking happens. But yeah, they've just. I know on a lot of these rankings and blah blah and all that, and I'll mention a band, I'll say they've not done a bad album. And this is truly the case this time. Faith No More have not done a bad record for me. They're all great. This was a really tough ranking, and there's 2 or 3 of them that have moved even since yesterday when I just double-checked the final list. I made a tweak. I made an adjustment somewhere because they're that close, and they're all... I can listen to them all of them still. So yeah, the ranking. So let's start with it. And the first one coming in, there are 7 studio albums. Oh, by the way, I'm not counting the You Fat Bastards, the Live at Brixton one, because that's a live one. It's just the studio records that I'm counting. So yeah, and also I don't have the You Fat Bastards one on vinyl. The rest of them I've got. So yeah, so coming in at number 7, and it is their 1985 debut, We Care a Lot. This was the one that I heard... It's the second Faith No More album that I heard. No, sorry, the third Faith No More album that I heard. After getting The Real Thing, me and my mates then decided, oh, we need to check out more of this band. And all they had available previously was the 1985 debut and the 1987 follow-up, Introduce Yourself. Well, this is coming in at my number 7. So... only because I think this is a great record, and again, I can still listen to it. There's some belting tracks on here. The title track, We Care a Lot, of course. The Jungle, Mark Bowen. I love that tune. And they played it, I was lucky to catch them live at the Download Festival in 2009 with the reunited, the reformed lineup, and they played that Mark Bowen track on there, and it was fucking ace live. As a Worm Turns, Arabian Disco. There's some beauties on here. What I like about this is you get in the very first... You can tell it's a Faith No More record. Even on this one, it's got the keyboard melodies and the guitar attack and Mike Puffy Bordin's absolutely fucking signature drum attack that he's got on all of them. And... you can hear all that on here. You can hear the influences as well. You can hear that 80s pop influence and a lot of Killing Joke in there as well. I remember, was it around the time that the King for a Day album, when they were auditioning guitarists to replace Jim Martin, they auditioned the Geordie Walker out of Killing Joke for it. And I might be wrong, but I got the impression he got the job and then through touring commitments with Killing Joke and various other stuff, couldn't commit to what he needed to do with Faith No More. Which I'm still sort of gutted about. I would fucking love to have heard Geordie Walker in Faith No More. Because, like I say, with the Killing Joke influence that you can hear, certainly on this earlier album and on other albums subsequently, I'd have loved to have heard Geordie Walker in Faith No More. I think he was a natural fit. But anyway, yeah, so my number 7, the 1985 debut, We Care a Lot. Coming in at number 6, and I don't know whether this will surprise or whether any of you care, but what my number 6 is, after long thought, Album of the Year. They're 1997, am I right? 1997, I think. This is a reissue. Yeah, 97. Their 97 final album before they split. They've had another one since, of course. But yeah, this was the album. They split up about a year later. And again, there are some absolute beauties on it. The Last Cup of Sorrow, you've got Collision, Strip Search, what a tune. Last Cup of Sorrow, as I mentioned. Mouth to Mouth, Ashes to Ashes. What's the other one that I fucking love on here? I've Got That Feeling's great. Oh, it's Pristina, the last track. There's some absolute beauties on it. It just feels, and again, they're all great, but it just feels slightly as if they were going through the motions. So it doesn't feel entirely cohesive, this record. And it's brilliant. And again, I can, if I put it on, I can listen to all of it, by and large. It just feels, it feels like they're tired. It's got that just slightly, yeah, I think I remember this is when they were sort of like turning up, what was that fucking awful Chris Evans show that they used to do, and they'd have quite a lot of metal bands on live. And it was the kind of the suits, the performance, it just, yeah, it felt slightly as if they were coming to the end of a cycle. And as we well know, since then, they certainly were. But there's some absolute beauties on there. And this was the first album that had John Hudson on guitar. And I really admire John Hudson's guitars. He's one of them that's kind of really goes by unnoticed for the most part. He's very unspectacular looking, which sounds awful. But no, he's not. He doesn't stand out like Jim Martin did, you know, for example. He's just kind of boringly normal looking in that sense. He's very unspectacular live. He doesn't really, he's just sort of very methodical, just goes through what he does. But I kind of feel that he was the perfect choice for that era and, you know, the current era or whatever it is, if they're ever going to do anything again. But I think he was perfect for Faith No More in a sense that Faith No More are a kind of band that need that guitar, but it's there as a background, as an overall. There's nothing really that's fundamentally guitar attack or the kind of, I don't quite know how to put it, but it always feels like the guitarist in Faith No More is doing their job correctly. If you kind of don't notice you're there, which sounds ridiculous when you think of Jim Martin that was so in your face with his look and his style. But Faith No More certainly evolved and worked, and even their early stuff to a point with Chuck Mosley on vocals, that was, the guitar was just a part of the overall collective of the overall sound. I'm not doing a piss poor job of trying to explain myself here, but yeah, it wasn't the be all and end all. It wasn't the focus, I think is what I'm trying to say in a fucking roundabout way. And that's why for me, John Hudson's vastly underrated for what he did, because he came in to Faith No More late in the day, so not only was able to fucking seamlessly do Jim Martin's stuff, Trace Bruns's stuff, you know, and he could do all of that, and he brought his own solid style to the band as well, and I think the perfect choice. I won't lie, when Faith No More did do that reunited tour back in 2009, 2010, I think like everyone, I was a bit gutted that Big Jim Martin wasn't part of that reformation, because I felt he should have been, really. But because he wasn't, I had absolutely no problem with it being John Hudson. I just thought that he was, right, well, yeah, just go with the guy that could do everyone's styles. Much underrated. I saw even a couple of friends and stuff, and I'd seen magazines and various things kind of having a jab at him. And I don't really know why. I think he did a fucking perfect job. But anyway, yeah, I've drifted off there. But yeah, my number 6 will be Album of the Year. A strong album with some great songs on it. But of the Mike Patton era, certainly, it just felt a little tired in places and a slight going through the motions. So that's the only reason why it's my number 6. Coming in at number 5, and this is the one that flip-flopped. It was higher up in my chart. It was lower down in my chart. But it is 2015's Soul Invictus, the return of Faith No More. And what a return, personally. I remember spouting the fucking virtues of this record the week it came out. I was instantly hooked with it. I say instantly hooked because the singles that they released were slightly underwhelming to me. Again, this was another debate I had with friends that were like, them singles that they released, was it Motherfucker and Superhero, are the only tracks that are any good on this. I'm like, they're the weakest fucking ones, man. Listen to the rest of it. Certainly, Motherfucker, that was clearly more a Roddy Bottom vehicle. That was one of his songs, and sort of sounded that way. And Superhero just sounds like Faith No More back, but slightly older, if that makes sense. But there are some absolutely stellar tunes on here. This was my number 4 at a bit. It was my number 6 for a bit. It's coming at number 5. I've decided that number 5 is probably the best place for it. The title track, Sol Invictus, is beautiful. It's just a really melancholy piano tune with with Patton's vocals over the top of it, just sort of brooding, building. Absolutely beautiful tune, and a stunning way to start the album. A subdued, low-key way to start an album, there's no denying. But a brilliant way to start it. Then goes into Superhero, which sort of ramps it back up to Sunny Side Up is a great tune. And one of the better songs on here. Separation Anxiety, another fucking beauty. Cone of Shame that finishes the A-side is another fucking ripper. Rise of the Fall, if I'm going to skip a track, it would be that one. And I feel that Faith No More, almost on every album, have a tune that I kind of... next one. Rise of the Fall is that on this one. It just feels a bit kind of like... just a bit filler, as if we need another tune, lads. The surprise with it was that it opens the B-side. I just wonder whether that could have been slightly differently listed somewhere. Black Friday, a beauty. Motherfucker, of course, decent tune. Matador, one of my favourites on here, and that's got a Killing Joke vibe to it in places as well. Absolutely stunning tune. And From the Dead to finish off. I think this is a brilliant, brilliant record. And yeah, it's only coming in at my number 5, but it's against some very fucking stiff competition. But I just think it's brilliant. An awesome return to form. I love it. I still love it. I can go back to it countless times. I just wonder whether we're going to ever see any more Faith No More now. I'm not convinced that we are. I think they've decided that sort of come back for one, see how the land lies. It went down incredibly well. It was very popular. But yeah, I feel they've decided collectively that they're not going to do it anymore. Mike Patton seems to be happy becoming like a kind of thrash tribute band with Mr. Bungle at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I love the current Bungle stuff. I'm the touring again as well. I don't know whether the UK is going to see him at any point. But let's be honest, I think if you go and see Bungle live, you want to hear the classics. You don't want to hear him playing the fucking demo to death, really. I know they've got Scott Ian and Dave Lombardo playing it, but... nobody wants to hear sort of dated thrash, which is what a lot of it sounds like to me. And it just sort of, yeah, I don't what we're all getting older, aren't we? I just feel like they've got a bit comfortable with it. People want to go and see fucking My Ass Is on Fire and fucking the other Bungle classics as such, like, not so much that. But anyway, yeah, my number 5, Sol Invictus, a fucking brilliant record. My number 4, now this was 6, was 5, was 4, and it's coming at number 4 because it deserves to be there. Introduce Yourself. This is a stunning piece of work. It's a stellar record. It was a slow builder because, like a lot of you, I imagine, I got into Faith No More when it was the Mike Patton lineup. And let's be truthful here. Patton's vocal chops are soaring compared to Chuck Mosley's vocal chops that are a very different animal. And there is no denying that. Chuck Mosley's voice is not a fucking patch on Patton's. But it's perfect for Faith No More. And at first it was a hard sell. It was difficult. I remember because, like I said before, the first thing I got into was The Real Thing. So and that was the current album at the time. Now, it came out 89 and I started listening to it 90. So really, that was the latest one. The only other stuff was the Chuck Mosley lineup stuff, the 85 debut and this one. And yeah, they didn't get a massive amount of rotations. There were some of the tunes, because it's trademark Faith No More. The tunage on here could easily be Mike Patton singing it. It is a Faith No More record, and it's obviously that. It's just a different vocalist. And that's what I learned to appreciate. And I love Chuck's voice now. I think there's certain ones where at first I used to love hearing Patton's version of As the Worm Turns, Patton's version of Mark Bowen and blah blah and all that. I prefer doing them. It's like, yeah, it's Faith No More with Patton on it, the old stuff, yeah, great. I've learned to actually prefer the Chuck Mosley stuff with Chuck singing. I just think his voice suits it now, and I've grown to love it. And I fucking adore this record. This is one that gets a surprising amount of rotations when I decide to dive back into Faith No More. Like I was saying, my conversation with Simon from Thy Listless Heart, and he was on about Faith No More, and I got back into it. This was the first one that I went to, weirdly. One of my favourite Faith No More tracks of all time. Faster Disco. Opens it up. Beauty. You've got Anne's song. That's another absolute belter. I fucking love it. Introduce Yourself, the title track, of course. Chinese Arithmetic's another good one. Death March is decent. We Care a Lot, reworked, and the best version of it. I mean, it's great on the debut, but they've reworked it and remastered it on here, and it's the definitive version of the song for me, therefore. R&R, Crab Song, another fucking beauty. Blood, Spirit, there are some gems on here, and if, like me at first, you were a bit reserved to dive into the Chuck Mosley stuff because you were put off by his voice, don't be, because you're missing out on an absolute treat on this record. This is an original vinyl press that I picked up at a fucking vinyl fair in Copenhagen. Just a little side story for you. And if any of you know Extreme Metal Vinyl from Instagram and from, I think he's on YouTube and various other stuff, I've met the guy. He's an absolute fucking star as well. And yeah, this was one of my purchases that I made on that day. We were on holiday, long story short, we were on holiday in Copenhagen and Malmo. We've got friends out in Malmo in Sweden, so we haven't been there in a while and we do want to get back. But yeah, this was one particular visit. I'd been on Instagram one day, noticed that he said he was doing a record fair in Copenhagen. I'm like, I'm there. I'm actually in Copenhagen when he's doing it. It was up in the Christiania, the fucking dope smoking part of town. I restrained myself. I didn't partake. I wanted to. But anyway, yeah, record fair up there. Got to meet him. Had a right good night. I bought this original press. Brilliant nick off of him. Bought Suicidal, Controlled by Hatred, the EP. Bought that off of him. And he threw in a fucking... Dutch band. I've forgotten the fucking name of him. He threw in a record for free. I think it was one of his represses that he did via his label thing. But yeah, so a little side story on this one. This original vinyl press that I picked up at a record fair in Copenhagen. I was a twat bringing him back on plane. I had to hand luggage him and be very pretty. Yeah. If you're going abroad and you need to get back on an aeroplane, maybe don't buy loads of precious vinyl. It's quite fucking difficult to get it back, especially via EasyJet. But anyway, so yeah. That's my number 4, Introduce Yourself. We're coming to the fucking stellar ones now, and we're coming in at my number 3, which I know is going to disappoint lots of you, but it's my number 3, because there are 2 better ones than this. The Real Thing. Yes, this is my number 3. Most people's number 1, and if you'd asked me in 1990, obviously this would have been my number 1 as well. Mike Patton's first record with them, and a monumental slab of metal rock history, alternative rock, alternative metal, whatever you want to call them, because they're not a straight up metal band, they're not a straight up rock band, they're not a straight up anything. They're fucking Faith No More. That's what I love about them. They're unique. No one else sounds like them. It's just such a good record. I mean, I could go on for hours. I mean, I've already done nearly fucking 25 minutes already, and we've still got another 2 to come after this, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet, he says. I say that every fucking week and fail. But there's no bad tracks on this record. It's all fantastic. It's all genius. It's all just, from out of nowhere, epic. Falling to Pieces, if I'm honest, I might skip that. It's just one of them that I think I just got kind of bored of. It's very sort of verse, chorus. Doesn't really go anywhere. It's a great tune. It's Faith No More. It's on a great album. But it's one of them where I just tend to find that I want to get to Surprise You Dead that follows it. So, yeah. If I'm going to skip one, it'll be Falling to Pieces. Surprise You Dead, of course, and then Zombie Eaters finishes the A-side of one of my favourite tracks off this one. Quite possibly my favourite Faith No More track of all time is on this record as well, and it's the title track that starts side B, The Real Thing. When I saw them at Download, the reunited tour, it was such a beautiful day. The sun had been out all day baking. There were so many fucking pink and red people around. It was like, you're going to feel that in the morning, mate. Anyway, the sun was sort of going down at that point. They came on. They did the little reunited Peaches and Earl, is it? that did Reunited and It Feels So Good. Right, enough of that. That's what they open with. And then hairs on back of my neck are going up now. Just thinking about just that drum intro to the real thing and the bass. Oh man, there was a guy nearly crying next to me. I felt like I was gonna. It was just like, oh my god, just what a tune, and to hear it live, yeah, was just fucking stunning. Underwater Love, you could argue the pop tune off of I mean, there's lots of poppy type sort of tunes on there, but very sort of poppy little tune, but a great song. Morning After. Morning After sounds like, I mentioned before, I think, when I was doing the Yob ranking, that for me, I can listen to an album and I can hear what's the connector song. I was like, that's the one that they wrote first for this, isn't it? Because it sounds like the connection from the previous album to the new one. And in this instance, it's The Morning After. That sounds like a track possibly that was overspilled from Introduce Yourself. That they were, it's got all them, I can just hear Chuck Mosley singing it. And it's a great little tune. And what a way to finish. Of course, on the original vinyl press, there's no War Pigs on this. That was on the CD originally, I think, which I've got upstairs, to be fair. I don't know if it's on the yellow vinyl reissue that they did recently either, but this is an original press. Woodpecker from Mars. Absolutely stunning instrumental. And Jim Martin firing on all cylinders. His guitars on this album are stunning. And it was his penultimate studio album with them. And the album that followed it isn't Jim Martin firing on all cylinders, but I'll go into that shortly. But my number 3, yes, The Real Thing. It is a 10 out of 10 record, but so are the two that follow. And I will explain as I go into it, sort of why I've chosen what I've chosen. But yeah, my number 3, The Real Thing, 1989. My number 2, and a slow burner at first for me. At first, I wasn't overly taken with it. There was a lot to digest, and as daft as it sounds, it all kind of melded into one, and I couldn't sort of pick up, but there was the odd bit here and there, and the more I listened to it, the more I loved it. It is 1995's, God, nearly forgot the fucking name of it then, King for a Day. Fool for a Lifetime. But yeah, the King for a Day album. This is a repress, gatefold repress. There's loads of fucking Spanish eyes on here. I started a joke, loads of hippie jam songs, all sorts of extras on here. But you've got the meat and bones of what, like I say, at first was a slow burner. I couldn't quite work out whether I liked it or didn't. It is 95, isn't it? Let me just fucking... This is a 2016 reissue, so it only says 2016 on it. Anyway, 94 or 95, I'm sure it's 95. It might be back end of 94, actually. Anyway, enough of that. I adore this record. Like I say, a slow burner at first, but the more I listen to it, the more I realise there's some absolutely stunning work on here. It's very different for a Faith No More album as well. I don't think there is another Faith No More record in their entire back catalogue that sounds remotely like this one either. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love it. I mean, to be fair, with Faith No More, none of the records sound like any of the others. Each one is different and unique in its own way. And this is a case in point. I mean, fucking Get Out, what a way to open it. Just really wallop, in your face, no messing around. Mike Patton's vocals are fucking firing straight away. All that range there, the screams, the high-end vocals, everything on it. It then goes into Ricochet, which is another one of my favourite Faith No More tracks of all time. Just a beautiful chorus to it, and the way it builds and revolves around, and that sort of straight up boom, boom, and again the guitars. This, I think, as I said before about John Hudson and so on and so forth, with Faith No More guitarists, I think the idea is that you didn't stand out wholly, that you were part of that whole collective, but what Jim Martin brought to it was unrivaled. It's Trace Bruns of Mr. Bungle on this record, and his guitars do stand out, because what he brings to this, there's jazz in there, there's fucking straight up fucking grind type sort of death metal type guitar in there, there's lounge, there's fucking blues, there is absolutely everything on this record. Trace Bruns is what a fucking guitarist. I mean, if you want to hear a guitarist He reminds me, some of my, and this might surprise some of you, but I'm a huge admirer of Johnny Marr out of the Smiths and a massive admirer of shock horror, contain yourselves, Graham Coxon out of Blur. Yeah, I think he is a stunning guitarist. There is no dead space if you can face listening to some, and I love a couple of Blur albums. Yeah, shock horror. In that war in the late 90s, the Britpop war between Oasis and Blur. Blur, fucking hands down. Not those fucking mank, fucking T-Rex status quo wannabes. Fucking Blur. They had variety. They had everything about them. And Graham Coxon had a very much a Johnny Marr style. I'm going off the fucking beaten track here. But yeah, no dead space. And that's what Trace Bruins brought to this. Every intricate little lick, little riff, little everything has been fucking thought out to the fucking nth degree as such, like. And Trace Bruins is clearly the finest guitarist that Faith No More have ever had, and that is comfortably the case. And what he brings to this record is what makes it unique and what makes me love it. This is so close to my number one. I mean, to be honest, this and the one that does make number one, which you'll all have guessed what it is for me, they flip-flop in reality. They're both number one, if I'm going to be honest. But I had to make a decision, and this one, purely because there is the odd track that I might skip to get to the meat, the juice. So that is why King for a Day comes in at my number 2. Okay. Right. Fanfare. Can't get it back in its plastic sheath. Okay. Alright, anyway. Let's just leave that over there for now. My number 1. Not the original vinyl, by the way, either. A repress. Oh, look. There's my download ticket from 2009. I like to keep the ticket stubs of memorable gigs with memorable records. And my number 1, this will upset a few of you out there because I know that there is... It divides opinion, does this one. But this, in my opinion, is Faith No More's... Sorry, let's try and avoid the glare. There we go. Faith No More's finest hour. This is where everything culminated. The atmosphere that this record creates is sort of second to none. I mean, I talk about atmosphere a lot on records because it's very important to me. If you listen to any of my Green Sabre stuff, you can see how important atmosphere was to me when I was writing that. It's very... Some of my favourite records of all time, and this being one of them, are all about atmosphere. Cathedral's Forest of Equilibrium. The atmosphere that all of that creates. And this, again, is it. Mike Patton had come in on the album previous. Fool for a Day. Sorry, need a sip of coffee. That's better. Trying not to choke on it this time. Yeah, Patton had come in on the Real Thing. So like I mentioned before, slightly nasally vocal approach. But anyway, great at what it was. Wallop. This is where he came into his own. I mean, what? It sounds fractured in places, just this album, because you can hear... It doesn't feel like Jim Martin's putting his whole body and soul into it, and as it turned out, he probably wasn't, because he fucking didn't like it. I mean, that's probably a strong step. I don't know whether he didn't like it. I think he just felt that he wasn't allowed to shine on it, really. But for me, Faith No More had clearly on this record, we're going in a different direction, and it felt like Jim didn't want to go in that direction, and sadly, yeah, I wish Jim Martin had stayed in them forever, because regardless of the what I've just been spouting about Trace Bruins and what I like about John Hudson and how would I love to have heard Jody Walker in there, and of course, let's not forget Dean Mentor, the guy that replaced them he did a bit of touring. He was going to be the replacement after Trace Bruins had said that he couldn't commit to it, and then Dean only did was it touring a bit? Because around the King for a Day era, that guy that's playing guitar, Dean, I should have mentioned this before when I was talking about King for a Day, but Dean Mentor is who I thought was Trace Bruins, because he was who you saw. You never saw Trace Bruins because he never toured or did the live stuff. So I assumed that Dean Mentor was but anyway, but he wasn't, and Dean didn't last very long, sadly, so sorry, Dean. But anyway, back to this. I love Jim Martin's guitar on this. He may not, because he might think that it's just fucking going through the motions, but I love what he brings to it. The subtleties of Midlife Crisis. RV, when it comes in. Land of Sunshine. What a way to open the fucking album. Just brilliant with that. And then you've got the Billy Gould fucking bass line. And I've not mentioned Billy Gould enough so far. I've mentioned Puffy Borden and his signature drums. Billy Gould's signature bass. And it's all over this record. It's all over all of them, but it's all over this record. You can tell that Billy and Mike Patton had more of a... And Roddy had more of a... the writing credits on this. Jim had been fucking sidelined, sadly, but I love it. There's not a bad track on it. RV, as I mentioned, Everything's Ruined. Love that track. Malpractice, pattern tune when it goes full on fucking metal. Like this is a repress, so it's got loads of extras on it. And I didn't realise that Easy, Crack Hitler, nor Midnight Cowboy were on the original vinyl press. They were extras on the CD and then on subsequent reissues. Kindergarten. And on the vinyl, of course, Smaller and Smaller ends it. I'm sure on the CD, Smaller and Smaller is like track fucking 6 or something. Jizzlobber, brilliant tune. Small Victory, great tune. Be Aggressive, brilliant tune. It's all killer, no fucking filler. I know a lot of people didn't like the move away from The Real Thing, that they'd have preferred Faith No More to stay in that vein. And I love The Real Thing. I just think that it was a child of its time. And personally, Faith No More had to move on. And I'm so glad that they moved in this direction, because this was weird. Don't get me wrong, when it came out, I was like, fuck, that's weird. But Midlife Crisis was enough to hook me. I remember thinking, that's so different, but I love it. And then... the rest of it is history as such. And yeah, there was enough of it on there to really grab me. It was just mental. It was like a fucking breakdown in record form. And it's got everything. Mike Patton's vocals are stunning on here. The guitar work, whether you like it or not, Big Jim, I think is still stunning on here because it does what it needs to. Roddy's keyboards are brilliant on here. Billy's bass, Puffy's fucking drums. It's just magnificent. 37 minutes, that's enough. So, my number one Faith No More album of all time, Angel Dust. And that's that. Right, let's wrap it up there. So, I got quite excitable once I got going there, but Faith No More, as mentioned before, are one of my favourite bands ever. That's enough for now. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I've had about sort of 4 more subscribers since. I think we're at 119, now. Nearly at 120. There might be... I'm working up my prize. I've got a plastic sleeve. So if I get to 125 subscribers, I might do a competition where you get to win a plastic sleeve. I've not got out else to give away. I might chuck in maybe some Haribo or something like that for it. But anyway... yeah, I'll work on that, but thank you for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Don't know what next week's video is going to be yet, but stay tuned. Until then, I will see you all later on. Cheery bye.